Alright, so this is Wizardry 8. It is back from about 2003, if I recall correctly, by a company who literally just came together just so they could have the same name as the people who made the previous games in the series, and then they promptly disbanded themselves. It has since got a Wizardry online, but it's not really a sequel as much as it is something else in the thing that may be tangentially related in the same way that the Final Fantasy series is related to everything. Alright, so I'm just quickly putting together our party, because I should have done that before I started this stream, more's the pity. So yeah, alright, to describe who our party is before we start, you generally want to have at least someone to act as our main line, so we have a samurai. Actually, you know what? I'll explain things later once it actually comes up. For the most part, samurai is a person who dual wields attacks really quickly and can later use magic. Our fairy, Bayard, is a psionic. Psionics are psychics. There's not much more that need to be said. He will be using a wand and will be our second melee person by the virtue of the fact that he's tiny and thus hard to hit. We have a bard, because of instruments present in the game to mimic magical effects. We have a gadget here, same thing, magical effects, but with gadgets rather than instruments. Our ninja, who basically just kills stuff at long range by throwing things. Ninjas tend to be slow to start up, but will pick up later on and can learn alchemy. Our ranger here can also learn alchemy and will mostly be just shooting things. You'll note that we don't have a healer. Our psionic is going to be the healer for the game. That's going to be very interesting later on. I am not doing the opening cutscene because it doesn't load properly, because it's an old game. So in summary, you crash landed.
By all the powers of darkness, this is a fine situation to be in. What is this place? Where are we?
Alright, so for the most part, it's a fairly simple layout. You've got over here, and over here. You've got your bars basically describing people's health. Their health is the red bar, stamina is the yellow bar, which is generally used to attack and non-magical special abilities, and blue represents your total magic, which then is divided into separate magical schools. As I temporarily forget that the game doesn't use WASD movement, we'll just get to start off with. So let's see. Just a simple chest. Your chests are always randomized in this game for the most part, except for very specific locked ones. So you can get anything in this chest from decent equipment to nothing at all. In this case we have a staff that no one is going to... Well, our samurai can use it, but they're better with swords. Our monk can use it, but they throw... Oh, sorry. Monks can use it, we don't have one. Ninjas can use it, but they're better for throwing things. Healing potion, a skull cap, which is probably going to go to our samurai over there. Darts for our ninja, and quarrels for absolutely nobody.
Yes?
Yes.
Now, each person has their own separate inventory of things to handle, so... put you over here. Ninjas are special in that they can dual wield throwing weapons, and they can have a chance to get an instant kill by throwing things. As it is, their throwing weapons will already penetrate armor. So, by the way, our bard already starts off with an instrument, the Poet's Lute, which basically mimics the sleep spell effect. It's very decent early on in the game, because being able to sleep the entire enemy party kind of simplifies things a bit. So let's go to our first combat.
Stand back and watch me fight. You might learn something.
And yes, my gadget here will always sound so insufferably smug whenever he talks. So I'll be demonstrating
Understood.
the Poet's Loot once combat starts. You'll note that there is an initiative system, so it's just a matter of generally
Shall be
waiting
so.
for people to take their turn as necessary. You just set up everyone's actions for the turn and start it off. Of course, I forgot to account for them falling asleep and so didn't actually move this turn. Moving is useful in that it allows you to actually... everyone will delay their turn and then attack in order as noted on the sides of the screen. That has some advantages for organising, but it does mean that you're also going to be attacking last. Unless, of course, the enemies are asleep and can't attack. Now, walking will consume turns from various people. So you'll note, for example, that we walked, but no one got to attack.
Right then.
Also, my Gadgeteer decided that he's going to be a fist fighter in melee. I need to fix that later on. You'll note that Bayard put a person to sleep by attacking them. Fairies had their own weaponry because they can't use normal weapons.
We win, naturally.
So Bayard, for example, uses the Fairy Stick, which basically has a 50% chance of putting someone to sleep. It also has a decent initiative bonus, which means he is quite fast, which is already combined with his high speed. So that's basically what combat looks like. You can find stuff lying around on the ground, just like bullets, for example, which will go straight to our Gadgeteer, who uses the Omni Gun, a weapon that levels up with you and gains extra abilities, extra damage and the like as time goes on. Well, as you level up, basically. So, generally, a lot of people will probably want to charge in through the front door, but there is actually a couple of things lying around out here. You'll note that a hidden item was revealed by our ranger. Now, normally you'd need to search, which is this magnifying glass, but our ranger has an ability known as scouting. Has a skill known as scouting, which gives him a chance of allows him to detect things just while moving about normally, rather than having to actually search. This is useful because when you search you can't run, which slows things down a bit. You'll note that the water sometimes appears purple in places. That's old graphics for you. Oldish graphics. Generally, you want to examine everything you find because it gives you a chance for someone's artifact skill to go up. It's completely randomized whose will go up, so you can select a person to be your active person, who's generally the person who will interact with things, but for the most part, it's not really going to affect much except for conversations and lockpicking.
I love it!
By the way, you'll note our ranger there noted danger. He enjoys it a bit too much.
Customer!
Very much too much.
Bloody hell. We're in for trouble.
Like my Gadgeteer, he's very posh about everything. So you note, for example, I'm waiting to allow them to get a bit closer, just so that people can actually melee things a bit. I also want the bard to hopefully put something to sleep near the end, about halfway through, so at least slow them down a bit. But first, I want to be in melee range for a couple of them to make things easier. And I just realized that wasn't the bard I put to use an item. Our bard is going to sword things. Yeah, that was a mistake. Make sure you actually know who you're telling to use what before you start your turn. Oh, so Zyke just revealed his special ability, Speed of Lightning. Samurai can do this. They basically get about 4 or 5 attacks in with one weapon at once. I mean, you'll note that he also missed with nearly all of them, but it's still quite powerful, assuming it works. Feel free to ask questions, by the way. I can actually see the Twitch chat in my stream.
An extraordinary
You think... I can get away with it as is.
Gosh darn.
Please note, you'll notice a lot of no damages. That basically means that your attack didn't even so much penetrate their armor. Ninjas get around that in that they're penetrating, but no one else really does. Early on in the game, as you can see, enemies can be quite nasty.
It shall be so. Our will has prevailed. Finders! Keepers! Finders! Keepers!
The one downside is the ranger will say that nearly all the time when you find something using scouting. That's one downside. It's so useful, but so annoying at the same time. Oh, right. New thing. Throwing items. Basically, throwing and slinging is the same weapon. You can get things like bombs, basically. They're referred to as bombs, but they're basically potions that replicate effects. In this case, Fireball with a power of 3. Generally, we'll be giving this to our ninja because they uses throwing items. Cure poison, cures poison. A sling is a sling. It says unidentified, but that just means you haven't even so much as looked at it yet. You should generally just look at everything for the chance to actually get an artifact skill up as before. This is a battle axe. It is a terrible weapon. Axes are terrible in Wizardry. You should never use an axe. I'm sure our ninja will be happy to be a mule for a little while. Now, just simply by holding down shift, as you can see, you run significantly faster through everything. And with the outdoor area searched, we'll be able to get thing proper. Oh, before I forget, you'll note that on our little mini-map, we have a white dot just around here. A white dot basically represents an item. You can actually see it over here. That little bag. We'll be coming for that. You can't get that at the moment, but we'll be coming for that in a little while. No, Zyke, use none of the axes. Now then, where was I? Oh yes, the dungeon. And now we're in the dungeon proper. It's not a pleasant place, is it?
I have a distinct feeling of dread.
Our bard senses danger. He's very, very posh about it. Well, not very posh. He's got the intellectual personality, and his style basically means he's fairly long-winded. Durang, on our other hand, is chaotic one.
I smell blood. Lots of blood.
He's a bit of a
Taken care
nutcase. Okay, not a bit of a nutcase. He's a total nutcase. There's no denying it. That's what chaotic one is like, I guess. By the way, if you right-click on some enemies, you can analyze them as well. So, for example, this is noted to be an even match for us at level 1. We don't know how much experience it gives yet because we don't know enough. But we do know and have a high enough mythology skill, or that is, our ranger and our psionic have a high enough skill that they can identify how much hit points they currently have as well as the total. We don't know their stamina, but we do know that they have a range of throwing, which isn't very far. There are other things, so you'll note that enemies are grouped in different ways. So we know I can identify the 3 green slimes over here, for example. And when you're using certain effects like the Poet's Loot, they're specific to enemy groups that are listed on the top of the screen. The fact that there's 4 groups is a little bit worrying. You'll note that while that one had 17 in its group, the other 2 members of its group each have 10 and 5 HP. Oh, so scepters, maces are useful in that they all have a chance of knocking the enemy unconscious. We won't be using them really, because we don't have a priest with us. Our rangers should be at ranged, our Valkyries should be using spears, we don't have a lord, and we don't have a fighter. Shame really, but there it is. Instead our samurai's going to be a mule again. Now let's slow things down to walk a bit. Oh, by the way, we can now see our little bats over here. One of them at least is 6 HP, the other is 4. They're pretty fragile. Bats on the whole tend to be fairly fragile. The one downside, as you can see, is there's a lot of waiting in this game. Just waiting for your turns to come up, mainly. Especially when you've got a lot of enemies in this combat. You can see at the moment the advantages of having a ranged party. It means you don't have to waltz all the way over to the enemy.
With pleasure.
Oh, formations. This doesn't really affect much because enemies are more likely to attack the ones in the front, but it doesn't actually protect you in any way. By the way, encumbrance can happen. It's based off strength, really, but for the most part, all encumbrance reduces your AC, but that's about it. I believe it also makes your stamina run out faster, but for the most part, it won't really affect you offensively. If it's affecting you offensively, your combat is gone for far too long. Or you got surprised while running. If you got surprised while running, when there is a mini-map that shows red spots for the enemies, as you can see down below at the moment, yeah, you have no reason to be surprised if you're paying attention. Pay attention.
Well done.
And you'll see that people's skills go up as they use them in combat. Frequently at the end of combat, sometimes in the middle, but very rarely. Okay, these are level 2 mighty slimes. We don't know what type of slimes they are, but we do know that they're incredibly fragile, so calling them mighty seems a little bit silly.
With pleasure.
I guess they're glass cannons.
That's that.
By the way, as you can guess, you can in fact loot items in the middle of combat. I'm not even going to bother approaching this one. we have a bag of items. We have some bullet stones and potions.
Yes.
Oh, auto-swapping weapons. That usually means that I'm accidentally hitting the arrow key, the WASD keys, which tends to switch party members' weapons if they've got a subset. The other reason is that a couple of people will have ranged and melee weapons, and for example, our ninja will actually switch to hand-to-hand combat if enemies get too close. Generally they won't, it depends on what their primary and secondary weapons are. For example, the samurai won't be swapping weapons because he's only got melee stuff. Our bard, on the other hand, uses a sword for melee, but when they're further away he'll sling stuff. Really though, he should just be playing various instruments. I hear insects. I hate bugs. And I was wrong, they're not insects, they're rats. I hate rats even more. Because there's so many of them. You'll note that if you miss, your projectiles will occasionally keep flying towards another enemy. It's quite a nice touch, I feel. Oh dear, our ninja has run out of stuff to throw. This is the one downside to ninjas early in the game. There's next to nothing to throw. The other option, of course, is a melee ninja, but that's a terrible idea.
How exquisite.
That said, I will probably be putting the ninja on the front line and moving the bard back a bit.
Taken care of.
My aptitude increases. Ah, my talents have been rewarded.
Okay, so our bards and gadgeteers are going to be the fastest levelers in our little party. So since our bard's big on identifying stuff, we're putting his intelligence up. Sorry, his senses up, because he's also handling communication. But the music skill actually runs off dexterity, so you'll be focusing a fair bit on that. You'll note that you can right-click on a skill to find out what things it affects. So senses, for example, affects identifying stuff, scouting, your psionic skill, and combat skills. Come to think of it, it doesn't actually affect identify. Well, actually, no, it does. But intelligence does too, and intelligence also has the benefit of affecting communication as well. So actually, that will be going up. Alright, you go to your next page, and you can level up their skills. So we have artifacts going up, since it is our identifier. Communication, because your bard is the one who does the talking. And music, because music. Which basically increases the chance of increases the power of your spells as if it was your magical skill. Gadgeteer, on the other hand, will be increasing his dexterity. By the way, once you get to 100 in the skill, you unlock it. 100 in an attribute, you unlock its elite skill. Dexterity, in this case, is extra power on ranged attacks. Intelligence gets you power cast, which is basically super powerful spells. I'm not really going for it for that. I'm going for it because it affects engineering, which is pretty important for the bard, for the gadgeteer, and also locks and traps, which is also quite important. So engineering, locks and traps, and modern weapon, which is what your omnigun is. There's rifles in this game. They won't be seeing any use.
I smell blood. Lots of blood.
I'm mildly concerned that this guy can smell blood on a slime. But what do I know about slimes? This is a noxious slime. It's yellow. It's sort of a mini-boss for this area. It's not really a threat. Especially when our pixie here could just poke it to sleep like that. And our bard will keep it asleep. You'll note that there are arrows on top of them. That's just saying who's targeting it at the moment. And as you can see, magical effects don't always work. But there's nothing saying that you can't repeat them. Musical instruments can be used an unlimited amount of times.
We win, naturally.
Or we could kill her.
Experience is its own reward.
Experience is the best teacher. Good! I'll do even more damage!
The other downside to ninjas is they take forever to level up. The other downside to samurai is that unlike most, they only get 1 bonus point per level up. It's very disappointing. But on the other hand, he just needs close combat, critical strike, and swords. That's basically what a samurai does. Double weapons is a thing, but I'm going to be seeing if I can make a two-handed samurai. Regardless, that's why I'm focusing on being able to use either. So we have the close combat skill for close combat, critical strike because that's what a samurai does, they crit. The speed thing is of course its own possession. Not speed, I want your senses up. Psionics works off intelligence and senses, so you want to focus on those. You'll note that there's different schools, so you've got your elemental, fire, water, wind, earth. 2 of the 4 I've animated. The cross is divinity. This is your healing, holy skills, heal light wounds, inflict light wounds. It's basically AD&D. And here we have mental skills, so charm, person, terror, mind step. Very pleasant. Right, so we have communication up, we have mythology up, and we want to increase our psionics further. Over here we have our ranger, who will have his senses up and his dexterity up. He will get points in ranged combat, also in mythology. It's best to have more than one person for mythology. And scouting skill, as mentioned before, allows you to find stuff. Speaking of which, something we can't identify. This will go into the bard's inventory until he learns to identify things and feels very disappointed in himself.
Check it out!
Frequently you'll find things in bookcases, like scrolls, that replicate magical effects.
Check it out!
We also have a hidden potion in that bookcase. Kind of concerned about that.
Look,
No.
something's moving.
Now over here we have a Book of Light. Now here's the thing, our main spellcaster is psionic. As far as I know, psionics don't get spells from books. So this is actually going to go to our ninja for when he does access alchemy.
How exquisite.
Because he's actually going to use alchemy. Our ranger is just going to shoot stuff. And find things. You'll note that there are actually items on a minimap, but they're actually through the glass here. You can't go, you will come around that other way for that. So yeah, a couple of guys left, had a prisoner here and then apparently forgot about him. Good job, guys! Now then. That gate is barred from the other side. We'll open it from the other side in a little bit.
This will be a party!
I didn't even see those guys. See what I said about... Remember when I mentioned paying attention? I'm usually pretty bad at that.
Understood.
Now then, I'm
Taken care of.
gonna delay our turn so they can get up a bit closer for the bard to music them. If you know, our samurai doesn't slash them to pieces. Right, I forgot. These are actually separate groups, so you'll note that Poet's Loot only affected one. Not that it mattered. Alright, over here you usually get a ranged thing over here. In this case we've got some arrows, which our ranger will be happy with. Our ranger will not run out of arrows, ever. Okay, so here's the really annoying part. I don't like this area.
We got a customer.
I really don't like this area. I get
Worthy opponents.
I get lost. I don't get lost so much as I really lose track of where I am. Especially when I'm careless with the cursor and the camera swings wildly. So we have rats. We always have rats. Ah, so the number beneath your gauges is just your health, basically. It's a numerical representation of your health. Nice little thing about bullet stones, they actually have a chance of knocking people unconscious, as you saw briefly. The rat then died, so it was pointless. Nice job. Nice dodging there, samurai. As you can see, sometimes your music fails just a tad. Just a little bit failure there. That's probably going to be a problem in the future. So, about the unconscious effect, you're basically unconscious. It's generally what happens if you run out of stamina. When you're unconscious, you basically can't do anything until you wake up, which can actually be for quite a while. Unlike sleep, to my knowledge, being attacked while unconscious isn't going to wake you up anytime soon.
We win naturally.
Beware, my power grows stronger.
That would be our ninja leveling up. At long last. So ninjas generally are focusing on dexterity because they're outranged. And generally they also want to look into senses because they'll increase their weapons, their main skills like critical strike. Yeah. Stealth is important. Unlike in most games, stealth doesn't make you stealthier as such. What it does do is increase your ability to avoid attacks. It's basically an increase to AC, which is really useful for ninjas because they get to next to no armor in the game they can actually wear. They're forced to wear their own unique ninja armor. That's not our ninja. That's our ninja. So like you've got the garb. It's referred to as a ninja garb set. Also the tabi boots and the ninja cowl. It's pretty good, but they can never switch it out, so that has its problems. Now then.
Check it out.
Over here we have quarrels. Quarrels are used for crossbows. We don't have a crossbow yet. That will be
Finders.
changing.
Keepers.
Also arrows. Yay. Link, eat your heart out.
Check it out.
And sneeze powder. We'll be giving that to our ninja. Sneeze powder, as you can guess, makes people sneeze. It's not very pleasant for them. but more accurately, it makes them itchy, and when you're itchy, you're kind of unable to... It reduces your attack and defense, basically. You become less accurate and unable to dodge because you're scratching at yourself. I wouldn't actually know how well that works. No one's actually used itching powder on me before. I'm sure someone could explain that. Now over here we have buskins. They're a type of foot armor. They'll be going straight to our samurai since he's meant to be in the front. He'll be switching out some sandals for it. Now see, I'd love to give the sandals to our fairy, but fairies can't wear normal sized gear. They're midgets. So it will be going to our other frontliner, except he can't wear it because he's a ninja. So it's going to be going to our bard. It's just an extra +1 AC. Over here we have another potion of light heal to go to our samurai, who should probably use one right about now. We've got so many.
With pleasure.
And I use a potion of moderate heal. Good job, me. Now you might think of the concept of sneaking up on enemies. That's not a thing, don't even imagine it.
A great conflict awaits.
Oh dear, there were more than I thought. No matter, they're slimes. Now there's two groups of them, so it's not that easy to hit them all with a spell.
With pleasure.
Actually, at this point it would have been very smart to just not wait and instead just throw a cherry bomb. So here's the one downside I feel to this, in that you generally spend a lot of time waiting just for the enemies to take their turn. And incidentally, this is with, if I recall correctly, a mod to speed it up, actually active. Generally it can be even slower than this.
A magnificent.
You'll note the other slimes have run away a bit. That happens. It's annoying. Glad they've come back to join us at least. What? Be very, very careful with cherry bombs.
Taken care of.
Or with AoE spells in particular. Frankly, that was probably a waste, but I felt like using it.
My aptitude increases.
Ah, my talents have been rewarded.
Generally speaking, there's a mini-boss you want to save that later for, but frankly, I don't really care because it's still not that hard. So we'll increase our dexterity and our intellect so we can play music and talk at people really well, and identify things. Speaking of which, identifying things. Hey Bard, can you identify this yet? Nope. Okay. To our gadgeteer then. You will upgrade the exact same things. Okay, one weapon, unlock some traps, which will become relevant soon. Despite the fact that you haven't seen them yet, they do exist in this game, I assure you. Now, generally the best way to navigate here is just keep taking right turns. You'll eventually get somewhere. Except when I do it here, because there is another mini-boss in this room. Well, not really me boss, it's a noxious slime.
Understood. Understood. An extraordinary triumph.
Experience is the best teacher.
Yeah, you'll note that different classes level up at different speeds. That's very annoying. So for example, don't proceed, I'm choosing something. Have some patience, game. So, here's a useful thing that generally makes artifacts not as necessary. You still won't use it very often because you kind of don't have a lot of spell points and don't want to have to rest after identifying each item. There's a couple of, plus you'll want to save this because it's also your main offensive skill. You can get Shrill Sound later on, but that's still not going to be the same, especially since you don't start off with points in water like you do in Mind. So we'll be taking Identify Item for a thing we'll find later that I want to identify on the spot. Increase your Psionic skill, your Mythology, and Communication. By the way, there's a chest here. I tend to forget it sometimes. I'm glad I didn't this time. And there's a nice set of shoes in there. There's also a short bow in there that will be of use to absolutely nobody. There's a shield in here, which will be of use to somebody in a bit. Well, our samurai's dual wielding, our ranger's ranged, our gadgeteers... Man, I don't think anyone's actually going to be interested in this. That's depressing. I guess I can give it to our bard, but he's not ever going to be in a position to use it. I'll figure something out. So that, we have a bastard sword that no one's going to use because it's terrible. And I'm going to give this to the samurai. Oh, okay, so to answer your second question first, your Omnigun can be tweaked to add different attachments that allow you to use more types of ammunition, and it happens at specific levels, so it's not randomized or anything. Thank God. Alright, since you're the only one who's going to use this, you can use it. And you can also use these buskins, so you actually have armor now. Leaving the person with sandals as the gadgeteer. Very, very sad. Still can't ID that powder. I'm very disappointed. Now, this hallbuck is useful because it provides a shit ton of armor, as you can see. And these robes are still better than this cloth shirt. He has actually got it. Oh, guy, he has a suede doublet, which is pretty nice for armor. Short bow is a short bow, it's not of any use to anyone. Now, for example, you see that this is a 4 to 10, but it has a negative to hit and actually makes you slower in the long run. It's a one-handed weapon, but it's not nearly as good as, say, the katana, which has an increased accuracy and makes you actually faster in combat. Sure, it's 2 to 7 versus 4 to 10, but generally you want that speed. Now, the 111, I actually don't remember what it is off the top of my head. I'll get back to you on that.
Ah, a creature.
I'm competent at this game, but I don't remember everything about
No
it.
problem. We can beat them easily. With pleasure.
You'll note that now we know so much about this, we actually can figure out its maximum stamina and how much experience it's worth. Yay, slingshot stones. It seems silly that you can only find these in specific piles when it's pretty obvious they'd just be scattered all over the place. Now here are actually some darts. Now you could give this to the gadget here and make an argument that his gun uses it, but you kind of want the ninja to attack at range eventually. I tend to always think there's an item here. There never is. But I'll do everything, even use search mode. Oh, enemies. There were slimes coming, by the way. Thought you ought to know. There's also bugs further behind them. Right, I believe the first number is just the number of active enemies. The second number is how many are in range or have taken their turn, and the third number is how many are actually in sight. You'll note that the number has been going up as they enter the room. Though I just went down, so maybe not. Ah, there you are. That's how many are active, how many are in range, and how many are in view. In this case, the three that boss had 111 because we knew there was one boss active. It was the only one. It was also in range, and we could actually see it. By the way, roaches. They tend to also be fairly fragile. They're bugs. Surprisingly durable for bugs. But also pretty good at dodging. The one downside to roaches and bats is that although they're fragile, they're also very good at dodging.
Experience is its own reward.
Good. I'll do even more damage.
So let's see, we will get boss. You'll note that he now actually has 6 bonus points rather than the 1. I don't know either. Just move on. A ranger here is still very easy to level up. Dexterity, senses, done. Scouting. Ranged combat. Mythology, done. I'm hoping our bard levels up soon because I really want to identify
Check it out.
By the way, another short bow. You find so many of these, I don't know why. You never need them.
Check it out.
You could make an argument of giving it to someone who's not normally ranged, but generally you're not to bother doing that. By the way, people are injured. This is how you heal someone out of use spells out of combat. You just go to the scroll book, pick the spell from the list. Now over here is your the power of the spell basically. As you increase in power, you can see the number increasing in cost. Green is a guaranteed chance of casting. I believe there's a yellow and as it goes green, yellow, orange, and then eventually red for chance of success on the spell cast. And it doesn't like get harder as you get less spell points. It just basically means that the more spell points you're using, the harder it gets, because you're channeling a lot more power each time. The ninja gets no healing because the ninja should not be getting hit in the first place. Now here's a nice little thing. It's the poser's hat. This basically means someone else can get a 10% increase in their skill at locks and traps, except that person cannot be someone who already has the skill. It's hilarious. It's useless. Well, actually no, in some parties it might be useful, but there's almost no party when you're actually going to use it. For fun, we're going to give it to our fairy because it's something he can wear, though I prefer to think it's just drooping over his head.
Finders, keepers.
By the way, another spellbook that our spellcaster can't use. At least a ninja's got some good reading for later. Now, you know what? You've earned an explanation. Stat attributes. Your strength is your physical damage. It's your ability to punch things. Well done. Your intelligence increases your skills, but it also increases spell points. Now, piety also increases your spell points. In fact, it increases your spell points by a lot, but it affects very few skills. It affects your magical realm skills, but that's about it. as it will increase your spell points, but what it really does is it increases your stamina. Your vitality also increases your stamina, as well as your health and your carrying capacity. Then you've got dexterity, which is your range, your ability, your accuracy. Strength is your damage, dexterity is your accuracy. Speed is your initiative, basically. And high and low level speed can also affect armor, and since it's your ability to find things. Generally, it's your ability to find items when searching, but since we already have a guy scouting for us, we don't have to care so much about that. Now, you can actually switch classes of the sort, but you generally don't want to do that. It can mess things up a bit. You end up, generally people spend a couple of levels in one skill and then switch to another. One class and then switch to another later on for the rest of the game. For the most part, you don't want to just switch on the fly. I don't do it because I just don't like it. I don't see a point in it. Here's a door. It is unlocked.
Finders! Keepers!
Remember the prisoner that they forgot. This is the prisoner they forgot. There is a ring here. It is the ring of protection. If he had failed to identify that, this is what I was going to use the identify spell on. But at least we can rely on him for that. And that's a simple +1 AC right there. You also have a note. We're going to keep it. Basically mean it's no actual prisoner saying they screwed up. You also hear about the Higadi. This will be mildly irrelevant later on. Only mildly. And also, boots. Boots are always nice. So our samurai here will get a significant armor up, and our gadget here will get a bit of an armor boost as well. No one else has a use for it. Move on, keep taking the right side. Normally there's a left-hand rule that I follow where you always turn left, but here you want to do right, because otherwise you miss things.
It's locked.
So by the way, you get a tutorial, the lock system. So there's a couple of important things about the lock system. First off, there's the skills involved. So for example, we have the samurai picked, he doesn't have a skill for it. He doesn't have knock knock, which is basically a spell that you can use for it. There's also magical picks that do the same thing, but he can physically force it with a 3% success rate. Don't do that, there's no point. So what you have here are, well, this is basically stuff that's used later on. That's basically you click on them repeatedly until they stick. There's nothing special about them, it's just button mashing. Here you can use a spell to help you with it, like the knock knock spell. More on physically forcing it. This is basically your options for physically forcing it, or if you want to use an item to open it, like knock knock picks, that's how you might use it. Now then, can I get my normal cursor back please? Thank you. We'll be switching to our gadgeteer over here, who has a 19% chance of success. Failure isn't going to do much, and when you're picking a lock, it's not trapped. You just click until it works.
No problem. We can beat them easily.
And find bugs that apparently can't get through very large holes between bars. These are the best bugs. These are also roaches. They're very fragile. They also have a very short attack range, so they're always going to come towards you. So your martial arts skill is basically unarmed combat. Not everyone really gets it as a skill. It's ninjas and monks who can use it. Generally, if you're using it as a ninja, you're kind of doing it wrong, but at this point in time I don't get much of a choice because there's almost nothing to throw. I mean, I could use his sling, and in fact probably should consider getting him to use a sling instead. It's just a matter of finding a bunch of stones to use. Well, it's not like he's using them, so... Here, our ninja uses a slingshot. Wonderful. Well, not even slingshot, just a sling. Now, with darts, since I'm being asked the question about how darts are used, you don't use a blowgun for them, you're literally just throwing them. It is literally a throwing dart. For the people who are watching this on YouTube later on, you'll notice that I'm asking questions that you can't seem to see. I've got this running as a Twitch thing as well, but can't get the chat window open in the stream yet, so sorry about that. Now these are knock-knock picks. They allow you to magically open locks. By the way, this is what the map looks like. It's not that helpful. I mean, it's a little helpful, but not really, because it's showing all the levels, so it gets confusing. I mean, a map's useful sometimes, just not here. By the way,
Locked.
another magically locked door. Oh, not magically, it's just locked. More massive clicking until something works. If it had continued messing up, I was going to magically force it.
No problem. We can beat them easily.
This is our first proper mini-boss. It's the King Crab. He is not a threat.
Right then.
Understood.
Like so many things in this game, he's perfectly vulnerable to being put to sleep. However, he does have reach, so you generally want to get up close, because he's not going to approach you immediately. You'll note that just because you're asleep doesn't mean that you'll always be woken up by damage. This goes both ways.
Understood.
So generally don't rely on it. You'll note that playing music actually takes a lot of stamina away, so you can't keep it up forever, but it's still fairly useful, and unlike spell points, stamina regenerates quite quickly. So yeah, you're basically, most of the game is basically just a lot of combat like this, and figuring out solutions. Not much in the way of puzzles, so there are a couple of things you need to keep an eye out for. While this has a lot of blatant references to D&D mechanics and the like, you're not going to get randomly hit by traps.
Understood.
Most of the time it's just a lot of waiting, because the enemies aren't that dangerous, but they can take a while to kill. It's not even a battle of attrition so much as a battle of patience.
Beware. My power grows stronger.
Yes, yes, you're very powerful. So once again, we'll be increasing his dexterity and his senses. Your critical strike, your stealth, and your throwing and sling. And we have a bag here. Actually no, we have crab cakes here. They provide restore health. Basically, everything, even food, it doesn't like have a flat healing effect, it just replicates the spell.
Check it out!
By the way, we found yet another short bow. This place is full of them. I'm not sure why the short bow is in the wine cellar. Oh, by the way, dynamite! Stink bombs. So yeah, you've got cherry bombs and then you've got your ordinary bombs. This just replicates noxious fumes, which basically induces nausea, which means that they have a chance of not being able to attack. It's a very annoying status effect. And we have arrows here for our delightful ranger to take advantage of. Now over here, the door I mentioned earlier we couldn't open, that was because there was this bar in it. It's open now if you want to take the shortcut, which I'll be showing you a reason to take advantage of. Ah, now this is what I was looking for. This is a crossbow. A range.
What now?
One nice thing is that there's no separate crossbow and bow skill, it's all the same skill. Crossbows have the disadvantage in the fact they're less accurate and much slower than a bow is. But I still think they're better. And it becomes quite useful later on. Quarrels, well, they drain stamina, 5 to 11 damage versus 3 to 7 damage. So it's still quite nice. But what becomes good is later is a couple of stuff that gadgeteers can make later on. So if you have a gadgeteer, you'll generally want to bring your ranger along and vice versa, just to take the full advantage of that.
Everyone ready to fight?
By the way, it's another slime.
It shall be so.
This is a terrible monastery.
Good.
One icky thing is that there's actually that rocky thing there is actually kind of a skull from what I can tell. You notice that a lot of nerves seem to be coming from it in the actual slime. It's, yeah, yuck.
Our will has prevailed.
Right, we have yet another sling over here. Wonderful. No, you can't do anything special with slings. That's specific to the crossbow.
I see ya!
By the way, he's commenting on the fact that he can see fish. He's a cat, it's his thing, I suppose. More accurately, they do that whenever they detect an enemy, regardless of whether or not the enemy is actually going to be able to get to you anytime soon. So yeah, I'm just scanning along here at the moment.
Now, what is this devious device for?
You note that there's actually technology and the like in this, despite it being sort of a fantasy-esque thing. But that's because it's sort of meant to be not futuristic fantasy, but there is at least a degree of modern technology, as explained by there being gadgeteers. Now here we have
Keepers!
another wine cellar. With a potion of stamina restoring potions, unidentifiable blue potions, well done there, Bard, and ale, which gives the booze effect. It is still referred to as a spell, even though I'm quite sure there's not a spell. Now then.
Booby-trapped.
Apparently everyone is perfectly capable of seeing when chests are trapped. Now, when there's a trap, you'll notice that there's all these different... Where are you? There you are. Okay, so here's the main thing about dealing with traps. It's all about this area here. These are all the different ways you can counter a trap, and traps are made up of up to I think 5 different lists on here. So your first step is to identify the trap, which you can do using this to scroll through the list. You can... Well, actually no, this is how you do. You click it to find the one that matches the one selected here. What you do first is you identify the trap using this. You can force it once again, but yeah, you don't want to force the trap. So anyway, so your first step is to identify the trap. So you inspect it as listed below. And you notice that it's already highlighting them for me, the correct 2 options. For example, you could usually go through the list, the incorrect one is obviously redded out, but the correct ones are still in green, so you just scroll through until you find the 2 that are matched there. In this case, it's a dagger scatter trap. If you fail to disarm it, daggers are going to be scattered at you. Shock, horror. Once again, the knock-knocks items can actually be used on this as well. You can use knock-knock items to bypass the trap, that's not always safe though. Failing to disarm a trap won't, destroy the chest, as far as I know, but you're going to get hurt by it. I kind of don't want daggers being thrown in my face. But nope, we successfully disarm it, and we get a nice helmet out of it, which will go to our samurai. We have a short bow, which will go to our samurai is carrying too much stuff. Okay, it'll go to the party. We have a stink bomb, which will go to the ninja. We have throwing knives, which will go to the ninja. We have a short bow, which will go to the ranger, because he totally needs yet another short bow. Now, inventory can fill up eventually, not from weight, but just from sheer amount of items. It's a bit like Diablo in that you get a certain number of slots. It's a bit like nearly every RPG in that you get a certain number of slots. So drag things there. We have it. The leather helm is pretty good in that it's an extra 2 AC. And then we can give this little hat to the bard, because I keep forgetting the ninja can't equip anything worth a damn. We're almost done here, so let's get out of here and continue getting out of here, and I'm going to continue to ignore that button. That will be later. So we'll go for a swim and find fish.
This lot is no match for me.
Please note that the Gadgeteer still remains incredibly arrogant about everything.
Understood.
Now that was an excellent music playing. All the fish fell asleep, right up until the one was woken up by a bullet being shot.
Aptitude increases.
Ah, my talents have been rewarded.
No, the level up speech never changes. So once again, we will be pumping up our bards, dexterity and intelligence, and ignoring the fact that he's going to be running out of stamina very quickly if I don't do anything about it. Making better identifying stuff, better at chatting to the 0 people we've met so far, and better at playing music, which we've done plenty more times than we've spent actually talking to people. Now, the Samurai's Lightning Strike thing, since someone's brought that up, is that's just basically a percentage chance of activation. You don't always do it, and you can't force it to happen. The fighter gets an ability called Berserk, which is, I believe, a double or triple damage ability that also draws aggro. But while that you can guarantee that a lot better than you can guarantee a Lightning Strike, because the former is actually an active ability, while the latter is a passive ability. So once again, we'll be pumping out Gadgeteer stuff. And now let's see, can the bard identify things yet? Nope. And nope. Such a display of competence there. Now I'm going to get lost in the water for a bit. And a bit more. And wish we could actually climb or jump, but we can't. And now, remember the waterfall I mentioned before? Here's the waterfall! Don't miss. And this bag is res powder, which does exactly what you can imagine. Resurrection takes a long time to get. Since we don't have a proper healer, the only way we're going to get it is through a gadget that you get much later in the game. So until then,
This is impressive.
we have that. You come out here, you take a dive, and
I got dibs on his stuff.
whoops. Well, I get to show you what resurrection powder does. The only way to resurrect someone is to actually use the powder on them.
Yes. With pleasure.
I said the powder.
With pleasure.
Life and death are but 2 sides of the same coin. Still, I am happy to return to this side.
That totally was intentional, and I didn't mess it up. I'm totally was showing you exactly how death works in this game. And, generally once you finish up and you want to rest, the only way to get spell points back, in fact, is you sleep. You can't lay a camp, you can get surprised during camp, and you can interrupt it at any time, which won't really do anything. And yes, you've noticed that he has wings. He died from fall damage. These are the laziest fairies ever. He has wings. He died from fall damage. He is a lazy fairy. I don't know. Yeah, so you'll notice that you can dual wield throwing weapons, and in fact that's what you're supposed to, what you should do as a ninja, since that allows a much better chance of taking advantage of their dual weapons ability rather than something else. Our bard still can't identify anything worth a damn, although he did identify that ring, so I can't criticize him too harshly. Well, actually I can, but I won't. And that's it for today, so I'll see you next time, and I hope I didn't bore you too much with this.